Welcome to this edition of lcpioneers.com Live, presented by PioStream. We are live Tuesday through Friday at 11:30 on Facebook Live and archived on our YouTube page, youtube.com/lcpios, where you can see a complete playlist of all of our past shows, including yesterday we had the opportunity to have Maka Vivas of women's tennis on to talk about her experience in her second season with the Pios, a rising junior now out of Spain. I'm Ryan Goff. I appreciate you joining us. I am the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark Athletics. Based in Portland, Oregon, we're a member of NCAA Division III's Northwest Conference, competing against other institutions from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington, and of course nationwide, with over 430 institutions in the NCAA Division III universe. We invite you to connect with us in our comments on Facebook Live. You can email us sports@lclark.edu or also on our Twitter and Instagram at lcpioneers. We are having our guest today, Lewis and Clark men's basketball coach Tim McCrory joining us. And we were scheduled to have Coach McCrory join us for a couple weeks now. We try to work 1 or 2 weeks ahead. And the idea today was to discuss, his first two seasons leading the program and kind of what's ahead. But given everything that's happened in terms of, protests throughout our country, even worldwide, over the systematic racism and violence against Black Americans and communities of color, that Tim was kind enough to kind of provide perspective, his perspective today. And, given the fact that, my association with Tim over 2 years, certainly appreciative. He's someone I trust, certainly someone I respect, and I'm very thankful that he's willing to do that for us today. So let's bring him in. Tim McCrory joining us on lcpioneers.com Live. Good morning, Coach. I'm appreciative that you're here because, as we watch the events over the last week unfold, starting, Friday, including protests, in downtown Portland, I'm curious, let's start with, what's kind of going through your mind as you watched everything. How has that been affecting you personally?
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for thanks for having me. Yeah, initially, obviously, the last couple months has been challenging with everything that's happening in terms of watching the unemployment rates skyrocket, just watching folks in different communities really just having to navigate a new reality, and this just going through it with them. Hearing from your friends, hearing from your families, hearing from colleagues, coworkers, just everyone in all different types of situations, having to just navigate, a new reality. And then over the last couple weeks, it's just been heartbreaking. Just turning on like a computer, turning on like your TV. You have some of your close friends sending you screenshots of just watching someone murdered right there in the middle of the street. And then immediately when you see something like that, it just for me, I'm in my 30s, and I've kind of lived. I grew up in Mississippi, so you kind of, you just kind of live that reality with him, because you've seen your friends, you've seen people that you grow up with, you've seen folks who look like you be in the same situation, and you kind of, I always remember some of my teachers, coming along in K through 12, they used to say, for a black man in America, you have two options. You'll die, or you'll end up in jail. And then when that's communicated to you over the course of your life, you just, as a kid, you just try to discover to see if there's some more options out there. So immediately when you see something like that, when you see one of your brothers right there in the middle of the street, just seeing their lives being taken away right in front of you, you just start to really think back. Like you start to think back on your own history. You start to think back on your own life, and it's heartbreaking because I'm fortunate enough to be a leader, to be in a position to guide some young people as their coach. I'm a brother. I have a mother. I have a father. I have people who, are really worried about my well-being, and I'm worried about their well-being. And then when you see something like that, you immediately, you just start to imagine. I'll share a story with you, Ryan. I know we have a short time, but when I was a kid, I remember, you know, I was able to go to one of the better academic elementary schools, just because I had a resource where I could kind of transition over from the elementary school that I should have went to, based on where I lived. I was able to go over to a different high school, and I was just so excited. I was like, okay, I get to kind of get out of my reality and go over and pursue a different type of education. I remember I was there for about I was a new student for about 2 days, and I remember I had to walk over to my aunt's house. I had to walk over to my aunt's house because my father, he would drop me off on his way to work. He would drop me off at school. I used to get to school super early, on his way to work. He had to be to work. He had to be at work early, so he would drop me off at the elementary school, and then I would walk over to my aunt's house. I would walk over to my aunt's house and then wait for my father to come home from work. And then my second day at school, I was walking home. Right, I was walking home, and then you imagine having to walk down. Basically, you have to walk past maybe a huge field. It's like 3 football fields. So I walked past 3 football fields, and then I had to make a turn, and then there was my aunt's house. It was really close to the school, and as I was turning on the intersection, I was walking across the street, and then I see a truck coming, and then I was like, okay, I can make it across. And then as I was, walking across the street, you see the truck kind of, speed up. And then the truck was just coming directly at me. And these were students and families who attended the elementary school that I was attending. And I remember the truck swerving in my direction. And basically I lunged toward the nearest ditch. And then that family kind of stood over me. They called me the N word and told me that I wasn't, welcome at that school anymore. And basically set the tone for me. And then, this will all make sense in the end. And then from that moment, I knew there was, white people at the school. Based on what they told me, I was not welcome in that new space, as a black man. And that would really set the tone for me. Because up until that point, I would hear my mother, I would hear my fathers. They would tell me stories about their lives, their grandparents' lives. They would say, "Hey, you really have to be careful. These are the realities. These are the realities that you live in every day." And up until that point, I was like, "Well, that's for you guys, not for me." But immediately in elementary school, that really triggered me. It really taught me that, oh, this is real. And I've always had an eye for that, and I've always been a person who supports folks like that because elementary school, and I'm in my 30s today. I battle that fight pretty much every second of the day, and I have a responsibility to that. And then fast forward to where I am today. When I immediately heard that, it was really cool for me. It was really cool. Like immediately when it happened, my support circle. I remember. Before I was able to watch a person just murdered in the middle of the street, Coach Pamela on my coaching staff, she immediately texted me and supported me. Coach Pamela's an amazing person. Immediately texted me and offered support. She's like, "How are you doing? Like, what, you see what's happening?" And then Coach Randall, he called me and he was like, "Hey, like, what's going on?" And Coach Nate offered support. And then my team, just a group of warriors. I looked on Instagram and watched them. They just dove right in and committed to the fight and committed to progress. And, they're demanding action. And it's amazing. It's just amazing, and it's just a battle for me. It's just, as I advise my team and I'm around my team, it's just you're battling my history. I'm thinking, well, I've seen this all my life. Even you can kind of look at the autopsy. You're looking at the autopsy. You're saying you hear the media try to manipulate what's happening. It's like, was he intoxicated? What they try to, put that message out. while clearly the entire world watched someone murdered right there in the middle of the street. And then once that you hear the media and you hear the spin, that's a great thing about social media. You can kind of create your own message. You hear the media trying to spin, and for me, based on history, you kind of really just start to go back to that boy who jumped in the ditch, and those people were standing over him calling the N word. You're like, is this history repeating itself? But there's also like I'm right on that line between history and hope, and this is the great thing about my team and those people in the locker room. My team, young people, give me so much hope. I put my I put my entire support in young people, and they give me so much hope from young people, because I know that when I'm around my team and I see the leadership of a Brendan Patrick, I see Day'Lon Floyd. Day'Lon Floyd is right on the front lines, every protest, documenting what's happening. Just a tremendous leader. Zeke Crawford, right there in the front lines. Jalen Lowry, like Jalen is the ultimate representative of Northeast Portland. Jalen has, since the first day I've met Jalen, Jalen has educated me on on issues happening in the Northeast Portland, and I'm just so grateful to be their coach. I'm so grateful. Like my team has given me hope, and I'm not gonna lie, I've just been so caught up in history, because I'm like, here we go again. But my team, and my coaches too, Coach Pamela, Coach Nate, just tough, Coach Randall, just tough people, just that tremendous push. But so how do we change? How do we move forward? And I'm just so grateful to be a part of that, and just just ready to commit and work alongside them, and working to create change.
He's Tim McCrory joining us on lcpioneers.com live. And I have many of the guests who come on the show, ask me, well, what do you want to talk about, and what I should say? And stories are so powerful in general, and your story certainly was, and the way that you're sharing how your team, has responded to in those interactions, those discussions you've had. I'm hopeful that you can give us, from your perspective, an explanation of systematic racism. When we say that, what is an overview of exactly what that means?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. For me, when I think about it, I kind of break it up. It's the way I learn. It's almost like a classroom, and then you have different, different subjects, different topics. So if I was to, start the conversation, I would just break it up into topics. In the first topic, one topic you could talk about incarceration. You could look at incarceration numbers. You could really lean on professionals in that field. I have a great friend who's pursuing a PhD currently, who has dedicated his life to studying incarceration for Black males. You can really lean on the research. The cool thing about a lot of folks ask, "What should I do?" You could just Google it. You could really Google and learn, and really, that's the cool thing about knowledge, is so readily available. You can just dedicate an hour. Some great people, great resources, great researchers, great academics have basically put out statistics and research. I think the numbers, the incarceration numbers, I think it's like you're 5 times more likely to be incarcerated as a white person, as a Black male, as a Black person. And just looking at those numbers and diving into those numbers to see, to see it for yourself. And then you have to ask yourself the question: if you really want to change, like if you really want to change things, you should, first look at the numbers, do the research for yourself. You don't have to reach out to people, and it's cool if you have close friends. You're like, hey, how can I help you? How can I stand beside you? But you could also like jump on Google and research those things for yourself. And then you ask yourself, why is this happening? And then after you ask yourself why, then you go out. It's similar to if someone was about to kick you out of your housing, or someone was about to kick you out of your space. What would you do? I mean, you would sign petitions. You would, think about who you're voting for. You would you would fight for it. And that's the same thing that you should do in this situation. It's just think about it. This was affecting you. What would you do? If this was affecting your family, if this was affecting the generations to come after you, what would you do? And whatever you would do in that situation, you should do in this situation if you truly want to change. what's happening. And then you could also look at what's another one? You could look at housing. I know for me, this is a cool story. I know we run out of time. This is a cool story. I know my mother, while I was in grad school, my mother was, she moved from the southern part of Mississippi to the middle of Mississippi. She had a new job. My mom was an absolute beast, just an amazing person, the most amazing person that I know. She moves to the middle of Mississippi and she's pursuing housing, right? She's pursuing housing, and then within that, she's just submitting bids on houses. She's trying to move to a predominantly white area. She's submitting bids. I mean, some of the bids, her real estate agent, she said, hey, maybe you want to submit a little bit over the asking price. And then it just came back, just rejection, no, and so many different reasons that we've never heard of why she's being rejected to enter that space. That's another thing that we should all think about is access. Enter that space and having someone who looks like her enter a space, because maybe it will make some folks uncomfortable. And then what would that look like? And I remember my mom. I remember being in grad school. I mean, she just rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. And after being rejected, she changed real estate agents to someone who looks like her. And then the next bid she put down, she wasn't able to move in her dream home, the original area that she sought after, but she was able to find a different space and start her life and start a new job there. So looking at how folks are able to access different spaces and what are those barriers and what are those barriers based on, and really diving into that and surrounding yourself with a community, to have those impactful conversations. Another area where folks tend to look at education as well. If you ever want to dive into, like, we work at colleges, me and you, Ryan, we're at a college. So you look at you see different colleges. I've worked at Missouri, I've worked at Oberlin, I've worked at Lewis and Clark. Ryan, you've worked in college athletics, you've worked in colleges, you've been around, you see what's happening. So you have to just look at access. It's easy to Google just the demographics at X college. What are the demographics of faculty? What are the demographics of staff? What are the demographics of the students? And then you just start to ask why, and you just start to dig in deep. I always share this story. I say it like when I'm when I'm recruiting a student, that's almost like my way. I'm seeking out individuals to kind of access our space as a basketball program. I always, my coaches are amazing with this. Like Coach Pamela she really is like, hey, what's it going to be like for this student, 40 years from now? Like what's his debt going to look like? If he comes in with zero resources, we cannot put him in a situation where, she's just really, really thoughtful. My coaches are really, really thoughtful. And that's the mission. Like, if you really want to change things, you really have to look at a student beyond just, kind of getting them in the space. You really have to ask yourself, when that student enters your space, are you ready to really put the resources forward for that person to succeed? If you really want to dive into it, if you really want to make change, then you'll be uncomfortable and be willing to make those decisions.
Tim McCrory joining us on lcpioneers.com live Tuesday through Friday at 11:30. And I've always appreciated your thoughtfulness and how deep you think about certain things. And I certainly was going to ask you about some of those next steps, which you kind of alluded to. You're more than welcome to kind of elaborate on anything else in that realm. But the one thing that I wanted to ask you was, I looked into researching some of this. I mean, that's kind of been within the scope of what you're talking about, putting in the effort, looking into Google and trying to figure out some specific things that you can understand about what's going on in the world right now, especially, given the last 5 or 6 days of protests. I want to be an actionable ally. And the idea of being an anti-racist as opposed to being just a not racist has really stood out in my research. But one thing in doing that I discovered was the idea of, not going to people who are in communities of color and necessarily saying, how are you, or what should I be doing, right? I wouldn't have expected that. Could you give me an idea of maybe why that, was initially maybe a good idea in my brain, but might be the wrong step?
Yeah, uh, Ryan, you're an amazing person. I mean, I know you, amazing person. You're one of my favorite people. I always say you and Rocky Campbell, you keep our lights on. I mean, and I just think at this specific time, people are angry, people are hurting, and honestly, what people need, it's just like a friend. Like I know Ryan, if there was something that happened to me, you would just, you know, sit with me. After games, like when you walk into the office and we take a tough one, and you walk by my office and you kind of give me a head nod and you walk out, then I know that you're with me. And I think it's the same thing. You have to let your people know that you're with them, and then when they're ready, they'll they'll let you know exactly what you need. But in the meantime, if you truly care, you just jump on that Google. Just jump on Google, do some research. There are some great professionals out there. I'm telling you, I talk to a person pursuing their PhD every day. I mean, he's one of the smartest individuals I've ever known. He has the solution. I mean, he has the dose, and those solutions are out there. But in the meantime, if you want to help, I mean, just sit, like, Coach Pamela tells me this all the time. Just listen. I mean, just offer an ear to listen. I was on call. I was on the call with my team, and my team was just, just just warriors. I mean, I'm so proud of those guys. Just I'm on a call with them yesterday, and they have mapped out. I mean, they are, because me, I'm telling you, I'm caught up in history. I'm like, here we go again. My team is like, Coach, I'm ready to fight, and they're true champions. But I think just listening, and offering the ear, uh, to our students, and to your friends, to your family, so that they know that you're just there with them. It's just a whole idea of protesting. They just, peacefully being together, showing love for each other, and knowing that, hey, I'm willing to come out of the comfort zone of my house, and I'm willing to stand by you. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point of it. And then, okay, while you're standing by me, what are those actions, that are going to take place? That's the older generation. That's the people like me who are stuck in the history. All you want to do is see some action. I just, I'm waiting. It's almost, like, come on, leaders. Like, where's the action? For our players, for a student, it's that ear. And, that's where my hope is. And my hope is really, really with our students. I mean, we have, this is amazing people. Like, just so lucky to be around our players. I think supporting them, and, working with them to come up with action items, um, and, just being a support system. I think that's what you can do. But I will say this, Ryan. I think you do an amazing job. Even the email, like all the action items that you've done, even, our conversation, the willingness, no, is just a lot of love towards you, for stepping up to the plate and doing that.
Well, you're truly an amazing human. I am so grateful that I know you and get to have you with me and try to support our teams, our student athletes and coaches. So appreciate you being honest and taking giving us some of your perspective, because we only have these shows, for 30 minutes a day, 15, 20-minute interviews, and there's lots more we could talk about. There's lots more we will talk about. So Tim McCrory, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Tim McCrory on lcpioneers.com live. Yeah, he is an absolutely outstanding person. And, you know, Lewis and Clark, student athletes, by and large, are some of my favorite people that I've ever met. I've said long that one of my favorite things about having the opportunity to work in collegiate athletics is college typically is one of the most optimistic times in one's life. And I am a person who has not necessarily been the best at handling conflict as much as I've been able to handle optimism. And the last 5 or 6 days, especially in having conversations with student athletes and student athletes of color, has made me realize that uh, college may not be always the most optimistic time. It certainly can provide optimism, but there's more that we can do to support our student athletes of color. And Coach McCrory, in our conversation that we've had, prior to even today, has taught me a lot, and has helped me figure out kind of again, the direction in terms of the actions that I want to bring. I talked about it to open up the show yesterday, the idea of not, just this week or while protests continue to go on, but what we're going to do next week and next month and next season and next year. That really has stuck with me. And I think he's someone who I will be listening to a tremendous amount. I recognize the difference in the racial diversity of men's basketball and football at Lewis and Clark. And I'm so happy that he's able to share perspective from that athlete to coach relationship he has with his players, and specifically the things that they have been telling him and talking through with him over the last 5 or 6 days. It's something that I'm hopeful we will have the chance to do as well. So big thanks to Tim. Um, I really appreciate him coming on the show because this is what we weren't going to talk about this. This wasn't the plan, but he was willing to pivot and give us his perspective in a time slot that he was scheduled for, and I'm thankful for that. Thankful for you watching as well. Tomorrow we're planning to talk to Tom from College Outdoors. One of the goals of this program has been the idea of bringing people who are in the division of student life, like athletics, on to discuss how their departments and the work that they do at Lewis and Clark impacts students and student athletes alike. Part of that that student experience. And Tom's going to do that. I mean, College Outdoors, from my conversations with student athletes, raved about. Owen Defner as well, from men's cross country, outstanding freshman year for him. So we'll have a chance to talk to him. Aaron Kong, Sammy Benbow, and we're anticipating women's rowing alumni sometime next week as well. That's kind of our agenda for the week ahead. Do acknowledge too that as we're doing this show on residential internet connections and me from my bedroom in Salem, Oregon, the internet is sometimes a wild card, and I'm extremely disappointed that today is one of those days where the live program was not as good as it could have been. But with the archive video through Facebook and the local recording we make on our computer here in the PioStream mobile studio, I will make sure that I assemble Coach McCrory's comments and put that out on our YouTube page, youtube.com/LC Pioneers, because it's an opportunity for us to share that with you in case the internet connection didn't cooperate as much as we would have liked. So until we have a chance to talk to you again, I'm Ryan Goff. Big thanks again to Tim McCrory for joining us, and we will talk to you again tomorrow for more lcpioneers.com live, available on PioStream at lcpioneers.com/live, and on YouTube, youtube.com/lcpios. Goodbye, everybody.